Guys, we are live again. USA. Today I'm going to share an article that was cited by Dr. Mahesh Sharma. We will read from one of his colleagues / probably student. Today, Dr. Yogesh Snehi. I downloaded his paper from academia.edu. And Dr. Yogesh is a faculty member at Ambedkar University, Delhi. Although he did work in Punjab University with Dr. Sharma when this article was published. And this article is about female sexuality. It's titled Conjugality, Sexuality, and Shastras. Debate on the abolition of Reet in colonial Himachal Pradesh. I never knew this practice existed. So let's delve into it. What is Reet? It is basically one man paying the woman he wants to be with as whatever you want to call it, situationship. One Himachali pays another Himachali to be in a situationship. And if they want to change things up, then the second heterosexual man is going to pay the first heterosexual man the same amount of which he paid that said receiver of money to break up. So there's a breakup fee. It's like China in the 21st century, except this was, colonial India. So he's talking about when the Britishers came and they were like, I can't believe this is being practiced. Let's build a huge church in Shimla so we don't have to hear any of this. I can't believe females can choose their partners. Yeah, I'm just voicing my ventriloquism onto the settlers. Settlers in Shimla had quite interesting notions about the hill society. Pahari mountain areas of the colonial Punjab were quite distinct from the Punjab plains as far as the expression of female sexuality was concerned. While it was not considered a taboo in Himachal except in areas like Kangra adjoining Punjab, sexuality had negative connotations in Punjab plains. Expressions of female autonomy in Haryana, for example, were deemed as badchalni, unchaste. Thus, when the people from the Punjab plains, who belonged primarily to the upper castes, came to Shimla, they brought these notions to the hill and paved the way for contestation of local customs like Reet. Kipling's works show how the nature and sexuality of the women of the hills becomes an object of the colonial gaze. He assigns typical characteristics to the hill women, like her falling in love at first sight, openness about her feelings, unmanageable, barbarous and indelicate, and unclean. Oh my gosh. Reforms attempted to control such active desires and aggressive impulses of women. These factors paved the way for questioning and contesting the customs practiced by the natives of the hill regions. Thus, in the late 19th and early 20th century, Himachal Pradesh was under a wave of double colonization. On the one hand were the British with their white man's burden and racial superiority, and on the other were immigrants from the plains with their notions of nationalism, reform, and revivalism. In fact, these immigrants, Sikhs, Hindus, Muslims, and Christians, had a greater role to play in challenging the existing social structure and customs that were regarded as immoral and unlawful. Oh. Local customs and traditions also contended with the legal structure of the colonial government and native states. Colonial Himachal Pradesh comprised of two types of regions: British territories, which were under the direct administration of the colonial government, and semi-autonomous native states. So the previous episodes we covered Chamba, it would belong to the latter category. Since they just reformed their army, they did not actually come under formal administration. There was like a British person sent by the company, but he did not have the final say in a lot of matters. as presented by Dr. Sharma. The regions under the British government were administered through colonial legal procedures. Native states also adhered to these legal procedures, but their instrumentality was incidental to interstate disputes. They had their own set of customary laws guided by the customs of the Praja and the authority of the Raja. However, the political control of the Shimla Hill states was entrusted with the superintendent, who exercised residuary jurisdiction in cases beyond the powers of a chief. Thus, Reet, which was practiced throughout the hill territory beyond the jurisdiction of individual native chiefs, became an object of legal scrutiny of native states on the one hand and the superintendent of hill states on the other. Origins of the problem. In 1910, Mir Munshi of the Patiala state wrote a letter to the political agent of the Pulkian states and Bawalpur to inquire if the custom of Reet prevalent among the hill tribes of Himachal Pradesh is accepted as valid by the British courts. A long debate on the nature of this custom ensued with this letter. The British superintendent of the hill states wrote that the custom of Reet, a form of marriage, remarriage, and divorce, is not regarded as valid by the British courts. By 1925, Reet was subjected to severe condemnation in all major Indian newspapers. Hindustan and Advocate of India, Bombay, wrote, "To these hill people, marriage is not a sacrament. To them, the whole affair is a sort of contract based on custom perpetuated for centuries, which is detrimental to the proper growth of civilization in these tracts. In one word, the whole tract has been turned into a big brothel. Marriage by convenience for consideration of money stands condemned in the eyes of the civilized world. Reet is unholy thing based only on the tradition, which, if not resisted, will go to the walls as all inherently wrong ideas explode." Speaking of wrong ideas, some AI manager called, I'm not going to say her name, murdered her son and stuffed him in a suitcase in the developed area of Goa just this week. Yeah, I mean, women have it hard. Let's just put it that way. And then they take their stress out in very sick ways, especially if they're overly into certain technologies. Let's just put it that way. Such reporting often gave an exaggerated account of Reet and relied primarily on the pamphlet brought out by Himalaya Vidya Parbandhani Sabha, HVPS. It raises significant questions regarding the perceptive differences on the definition of Reet. This article seeks to explore the nature of the custom of Reet, its form, its relation with sexuality, and Bardafaroshi. There's no translation. I don't know what this is. And the intervention of HVPS, which led to the emergence of an interesting debate involving HVPS, chiefs of the native hill states, and the British administrators. It investigates the reasons against the socio-economic and political backdrop, which led to the condemnation and criticism of Reet, as well as the debate on its abolition on the grounds of shastric, moralistic, and legal invalidation. This article shall scrutinize the matter in which Reet challenged the dominant notions of marriage in colonial Himachal. It shall also focus on the relationship of Reet with society, family, conjugality, and sexuality, which was unique to this region. Interestingly, earlier works on Reet by Parmar, also the first chief minister of Himachal Pradesh, he wrote an article, and Datta 1997 tend to support the perspectives of the colonial government and HVPS and sideline the native view on this custom. Shocking, right? The continuities of colonialism. In fact, they altogether ignore Native women's viewpoint on this issue. Neither did they look into the contradictions between the colonial and Native perceptions of Reet. However, there are other works like Berriman's study of Pahari polyandry, which have been helpful in understanding the political economy of Pahari customs and their relation with the social environment. So one woman can have two husbands, mostly of the same brother, like two brothers marry one woman, like that is Pahari polyandry as I understand it. Defining Reet. Literally speaking, Reet means a custom. To some, it was a form of marriage, but to others, it was the payment usually made on the occasion of marriage. McNabb writes in 1888 that Reet was a temporary marriage without any formal ceremony and was dissolved by the woman taking a new husband who paid the first husband the money originally paid to the girl's parents, ordinarily rupees 70. Thakur Surat Singh, 1924, defined Reet as a form of marriage without ceremony, contracted by paying a price which varied according to beauty, generally from rupees 100 to rupees 2,000, with a woman already legally married. There was no limit to such marriages and could be easily dissolved as they were freely undertaken. A letter written to the Superintendent Hill States, Shimla, in 1925, noted that Reet invariably takes place when a woman had actually run away from the husband's home. The man with whom the woman went to live paid for her to the husband, and if he was not alive, to the heirs. So like, if they had like sons or daughters, they would probably just stay with the grandparents and they would get like money from their mom's new guy. Colonel Wace, however, was of the opinion that Reet was not a form of marriage at all, but merely the payment usually made on marriage, the marriage tie being loose at best. If the woman goes off with another man, the new husband was required to reimburse the amount to the former husband. Both these accounts of native elites and the colonial understanding of Reet do not give a sufficiently clear picture of this custom. Even Dunnett, 1926, did not find it easy to explain exactly what Reet is. Okay. Parmar regarded Reet as an institution which served as marriage to some and divorce to others, or again simply as marriage to some, or remarriage or widow remarriage to others. Thus he treats Reet in Kangra, Bashaher, Kulu and Saraj, Lahore, Jubal, and Kumarsain as a form of marriage. However, in Sirmaur, especially in the Transgiri tract, he regarded it as a form of dissolution rather than marriage. Datta, 1997, believes that Reet was a form of marriage without any ritual or ceremony and was contracted by paying a price. Interestingly, it has been treated as a system of divorce and remarriage. Thus, Reet was practiced with a dissimilar logic in different hill regions. Nevertheless, it had an important element of marriage, whatever the way in which it was practiced. Marriage, remarriage, or divorce was defined the nature of conjugal relations. These conjugal relations were fundamentally different from the Brahmanic principles of ritual purity and chastity. In Kulu, cohabitation was considered equal to marriage, and the son of a woman who had been received into a house and treated as a wife succeeded equally with the legitimate children. Marriages in Sirmaur differed fundamentally from the Brahmanic theory of marriage as a sacrament. It regarded marriage as a civil contract terminated by the mutual consent of both the parties, and the Hindu idea that the wife is one half of her husband's body was hardly existent. This is a quote from Gazetteer of the Sirmaur State, 1934. It was precisely due to these reasons that Surat Singh viewed these customs critically and regarded the women of Shimla Hills as lewd and prone to temptation. So before we jump into Surat Singh's tirade against this, I just wanted to share with you guys my own experience with Hindu people eloping with one another and making an absolute mess because of the laws and stuff, you know. So I met one person through a group tour in the Sahyadri Mountains in Maharashtra. And I just treated this as like a casual vacation. Like I didn't really think that much like why these people were going there. So apparently a lot of dating goes on in this form. Like these couples who are not married or having affairs cannot openly have such affairs. So they find these trekking groups, and then the trekking groups serve as like the legitimacy for their eloping temporarily out of the bounds of like this Hindu code, right? And I was like, okay, I don't really mind who's with who because I'm not really looking for somebody on this trip, but I don't want to have no friends either. So then I made one friend who also happened to be a guide in the same business through these groups. And he introduced me to his married girlfriend. And, I just kept my cool throughout the whole thing, and I didn't really care, like, who's paying who. Like, I never asked that question until one day he just took the liberty of corrupting himself, cause I really trusted this guy. I was like, you're like a really smart guy. You're like the diamond, very well cut, very well educated. And
he was a Joshi, okay? So I did not have any problems with these people before until I met this particular Mr. Joshi, okay?
And Mr. Joshi just thought that he can get away with things because he doesn't have one eye, like he's disabled. There are secular laws that apply to both of us regardless of how we are physically as, human beings, cause I look drastically different from most people who live in Maharashtra, right? So I think he just took that as like a green signal for him to basically not give me the money that I lent him back. So he has kept this money for 9 months now. And I first contacted his married girlfriend cause I was like, I think she's the richer one of the two, and I need to get to the bottom of this, like if they are still together. So assuming they were still together, she might have some conscience on his part, but it doesn't work that way. Once like I'm involved, then suddenly they're acting on British code, right? So then it's like, oh yeah, it's his individual responsibility that this thing happened, and it has nothing to do with me or my actual husband. I don't really know him that well, except like on the weekends when we're actually together. And it's just like, I cannot believe that the shenanigans that go on in these people's minds. It's like, okay, like I get that you had your son, but he's still, an independent entity, and you cannot abort him when he's 4 years old, or 5 years old. That's not how even matriarchy works, like South America had matriarchy probably due to the leaving of, their colonial forefathers. And after paying the rate of the Latin American rate, now they need to face these issues with women in charge, Anyways, Surat Singh's tirade. There are many causes for this state of things, as for instance, religious ignorance, polygamy, and aversion of young girls to hard labor, and their passion for smart living, very much stimulated by the proximity of the state of Shimla, where thousands of young girls from here lead a life of dishonor under the cloak of milkmaid's business. Instances are common in which a lawfully married woman deserts her husband for a smarter man and definitely refuses to come back and frankly offers to the husband her own price. In 90 cases out of 100, the distressed husband agrees after a time. He knows if he obtained the woman through the court, it would be no good, as she will fly away the very next day. So like, I think this guy in Maharashtra is doing the same thing. He's just like, I don't know this girl. If she's not going to pay for me and you sue me, I'm just going to leave wherever we met in the first place. And so I do feel bad for this, married woman who obviously has like very little agency in her, situation, because she's not the one who, gobbled up the money. But on the other hand, like, why would she want to hang out with us in the first place? Because I didn't really want to like know somebody who's 50 years old. And like this dude was just like, you two should get together. And I'm like, I really don't want to know what goes on, and people just keep telling me what goes on. It's my karma. Okay. Reed also had an important element of divorce, which apparently shook the Hindu sentiment. If a woman in Sirmaur disliked her husband, she returned home, arranged a marriage with someone else, paid Reed to her first husband, and went to live with a new one. Her first husband could not refuse to accept the Reed, though he may haggle over the amount. Women could thus change their husbands when and as often as they choose, and this liberty was not considered as evil. The existence of such notions of sexuality led to the emergence of many debates relating to their legality. Although Reed had customary validity in most of the native hill states, in many cases it was questioned in a court of law on the pretext of morality. It was also argued that there is no provision in the Hindu scriptures enjoining so much liberty to a woman. Read sexuality and shastras. So shastras are the Hindu texts that the colonial officials consulted before they made certain rules. Colonialism was marked by the legitimization of textual customs through legislation and codification of the dominant practices. Even social reformers like the Himalaya Vidya Parbandhani Sabha, HVPS, a socio-religious organization working in the erstwhile Shimla Hill estates and the hill districts of the colonial Punjab, aimed at legalizing such codes of behavior. Thus began an attempt to structure the society into a supposedly ideal type of order envisioned by the dominant castes. HVPS had apparently been working for the social uplift of the hill people inhabiting the Himalayas and operated in close coordination with organizations like the Hindu Sabha, Singh Sabha, Sewa Samiti, Akhara Committee, and Sanatan Dharam. Its close coordination with the religious bodies and missionaries of the plains had direct implications for the society of this region. It should be noted that these bodies, in one way or the other, followed Brahmanic doctrines based on the Shastras, which were largely alien to the hills. In 1924, Thakur Surat Singh, General Secretary of HVPS, wrote a detailed letter to the Superintendent Hill Estates, Shimla, in the fervent hope of eliciting the latter's support to the Sabha's efforts in the matter of eradicating a supposedly pernicious and prevalent custom of Reet. Surat Singh argued that under the baneful influence of Reet, marriage had lost its sanctity, domestic relations all their felicity, and society all the ties which made it a means to civic welfare. He justified his arguments by relating the decline in morality to the rise in venereal diseases, thus depriving the people of this district from rendering service to the King Emperor on the one hand and winning glory for the country on the other. Surat Singh further related Reet with the slave trade and traffic in girls. In 1924, HVPS convened meetings to bring home to the people the vices of this custom, and passed a resolution directly attacking the women of the hills. Among other things, it postulated that no woman shall remarry in her husband's lifetime. That's why they go to these dubious people through trekking groups, and then they don't recognize that this person has done many bad things. Like, this guy has also gobbled up money from other people, according to another source, from this trekking group. And I was just like, y'all just gonna let him do this? This is like some, gangsta shit. Sexuality was central to the debate on Reet. According to Surat Singh, it allows too wide latitude to the people in selecting and divorcing their mates, unrestricted by any of the forces of nature, of virtue. Freudian slip. It allows too wide latitude to the people in selecting and divorcing their mates, unrestricted by any of the forces of virtue. The entire population is guided by one instinct alone, that of fomenting disaffection between a married couple otherwise happy. Education is already rare, and among the females it is unknown. Added to it, poverty and the notions of chastity and morality are rendered queer and low. Woo! Debauchery gets hold of them from an early age, and the custom of Reet gives the carte blanche to revel in it without incurring any social or moral stigma. Poor Surat Singh. Surat Singh's argument emphasized that marriage, domestic relations, and the society should not be left loose. Notions of chastity and morality should be elevated, and women's sexuality should be controlled. He related to the decline of sanctity of marriage and felicity of domestic relations to women's sexuality, and lamented that social and moral principles had been warped due to Reet. HVPS had interesting notions about the British administration and their civilizing mission. This was in line with many other reformist and revivalist movements in colonial India, like the Arya Samaj. HVPS attempted to differentiate between the civilized British government and its civilized Hindu subjects and the uncivilized tribes of the hills. Well, but the hill people didn't murder their children. The British government have already served humanity in such philanthropic work as the abolition of sati, thuggi, female infanticide, and offering of human beings before gods. They have also been the pioneers in the eradication of slave trade from the face of the earth, and the only explanation why they have so far been callous in the matter of abolishing this custom of Reet seems to be that they have not yet been seized of the havoc this evil has done, and has the potentiality of yet doing. Surat Singh pleaded the superintendent hill states to take suitable steps in the matter concerning the people of Shimla Hills and freeing them from the most prevalent corruption, which was marring their progress and stigmatizing them in the eyes of civilized world. Until June 1924, Reed was questioned for its laxity of public morality. Like they don't have other things to do in their lives. HVPS's argument was based on its obsession with the Shastras. It did not try to find its relation with the customary practices. Even Kettlewell's argument does not provide a plausible answer to the customary validity of Reet, which was widely prevalent in almost all the hill states and was practiced since times immemorial.